Hello everyone, welcome. This is your elective subject hardware and PC maintenance. So now BIOS. See, what is this BIOS? BIOS is basic input output services. So BIOS, basic input output services. So the CPU doesn't automatically know how to talk with any device. It needs some sort of support programming loaded into memory that teaches it about a particular device. So this programming is called basic input output services. So whatever input output devices you install to your system, so your CPU should be aware of that. So that is basic input output services. The programs dedicated to enabling the CPU to communicate with devices are called services. So this goes well beyond the keyboard, by the way. In fact, every device on the computer needs BIOS. So first one is bringing BIOS to the PC. So this BIOS is needed to it enables the CPU to communicate with devices. Okay. So these are called services. So bringing BIOS to the PC. The CPU must have access to BIOS for the most important hardware, not only the keyboard but also monitor, mass storage drives, optical drives, USB ports and RAM. So this code can't be stored on hard drive or optical disk. These important devices need to be ready at any time. The CPU calls them even before installing a mass storage device or an operating system. So this BIOS, whatever code you have written in BIOS, that should be stored somewhere, and you can't store it on any hard drive or optical disk like CD or DVD. And this code should be ready at any time. The CPU calls them even before installing any mass storage device or an operating system. Okay, before installing your operating system itself, that BIOS should be there in your PC. So the perfect place to store the support programming is on the motherboard. So that settles one issue, but another one is there, that is what storage medium should the motherboard use. So DRAM won't work because all of the data would be erased every time you turn off the computer. So DRAM is dynamic RAM. So dynamic RAM is volatile in nature. That means when you turn off your computer, the contents will be lost. So this BIOS information you cannot store on a RAM. But for that you need some permanent storage, program storage device that does not depend on other peripherals to work, and that storage device should sit on the motherboard. Okay. So here CMOS and RTC. So because the BIOS firmware is stored in ROM and ROM is read-only, it needs a place to store all its settings, so they don't have to be re-entered every time you boot your computer. So your BIOS program, where to store this BIOS program? So you can't store this BIOS program on any hard drive or optical disk, because that should be you can't store it on RAM also, because RAM is dynamic, and your BIOS program should be there before you load your operating system. So there should be a permanent storage device, that is here. So this BIOS is stored on ROM, and ROM is read-only memory. So where it is stored, it needs a place to store all its settings, so they don't have to be re-entered every time you boot your computer. Booting your computer means switching on your computer, and that process is called the booting. Startup instructions are executed. This is called booting. So the place is a tiny bit of RAM hooked up to a small battery to keep it working with the PC off. So it should work even when the PC is off. So we call this memory the complementary metal oxide semiconductor, CMOS, complementary metal oxide semiconductor chip. So in addition to storing all the various BIOS settings, CMOS also handles the system's real-time clock, that is RTC. So you don't have to keep setting the time on every boot. Okay, so it will handle the system's real-time clock, RTC, and it will keep the time up to date every time you boot the system, and the time will be up to date. So here, what is the CMOS? All the BIOS information is stored in this small chip, that is CMOS. If data stored in the CMOS about a piece of hardware is different from the specs of the actual hardware, the computer cannot access the piece of hardware. So this piece of hardware. So it is crucial that this information be correct. If you change any of the previously mentioned hardware, you must update CMOS to reflect those changes. You need to know therefore how to change the data in CMOS. Okay. So CMOS contains all the information of your input output devices, already installed input output devices. So if you want to change your input output devices, if you install some new type of any devices, you need to change the CMOS. Okay. So how to change this CMOS? So text based UEFI Intel based setup utility. See here, the information tab offers straightforward information about the CPU and RAM amount and cryptic information about the hard drive. See here, this is how to change the data of CMOS. See here, the option is given here. See this information tab. This is the information tab. The information tab offers straightforward information about the CPU and RAM amount and cryptic information about the hard drive. See this information, the tab shows product name Lenovo IdeaPad and BIOS version and EC version. So CPU with the processor and some information about the CPU and RAM amount and some cryptic information about the hard drive. So this is under information tab, and see here the very next tab to information tab is configuration. So this the configuration tab shows a number of built-in devices that you configure or enable disable here. So you can enable or disable here in configuration tab because it is portable. It has an option to turn on off wireless networking capabilities. So you can turn your on or off wireless networking here in this configuration tab. So there is one more option, a virtual machine. So this is a powerful type of program that enables you to run a second or third or fourth software based machine inside your physical PC. Okay, it is a software, it is a virtual machine. It recreates the motherboard, hard drives, RAM, network adapters and more, and is just as powerful as a real PC. To run these virtual machines, you will need a very powerful PC. So because you are trying to run multiple PCs at the same time. Okay, so this virtual machine is same as your physical machine. Okay, it has all the features, whatever feature your physical PC has, all the features the virtual machine will also contain these features. See, first one is information tab, next configuration tab, security tab, and boot tab. There is a boot tab, and the boot tab enables you to set boot options to determine which bootable device gets priority. Here is where you provide support for booting to a USB device, and it looks a little different from the graphical. So so here the boot tab enables you to set boot options to determine which bootable device gets priority. See here, this is the boot tab. Even USB boot is there. See, this is about BIOS, basic input output system. So this basic input output system, what is this? Whatever the input output devices you have installed onto your system, you should make it familiarize with the CPU. Okay, you should familiarize the input output devices with the CPU. So for that we have a BIOS to communicate with the, it will communicate to CPU. It enables the CPU to communicate with devices. Okay, and this BIOS information is stored on a complementary metal oxide semiconductor chip, and this BIOS is a firmware. It is stored on ROM, because ROM is read only, so it will not change, and ROM is volatile in nature. That means when you turn off the computer, the contents of ROM will not be erased, and you can't store this BIOS information anywhere other than ROM. And here the CMOS information. So it is the information about all the input output devices which are connected to your PC. And if you want to change the information of CMOS, you have a text based setup utility. Here this is the setup utility, and here we have information tab, configuration, security, and boot tab. Okay, so now postcards, power on self test, that is post. What is this? Power on self test. So beep codes, numeric codes, and text error codes may be helpful, can sometimes be misleading, and inoperative device can sometimes disrupt the post, forcing the machine into an endless loop. This causes the PC to act dead, no beeps and nothing on the screen. In this case, you need a device called a postcard to monitor the post and identify which piece of hardware is causing the trouble. So why these postcards are used? Power on self test, to test your system. So if any thing has gone wrong with your PC, means you will get some beep codes or numeric codes or text error codes. But here we have a post. So this is to monitor the or identify which piece of hardware is causing the trouble. So postcards are simple cards that snap into expansion slots on your system. A small 2-character light emitting diode, that is LED, readout on the card indicates which device the post is currently testing. Okay. See, here it is a 2-character LED. See here 00, you can see that 00, 2-character. It shows actually which character or which device is currently testing. Postcards used to be essential tools for text, but today we use them only when we have a dead PC to determine at which level it's dead. If the postcard showing no reading, the problem must be related to the power, the CPU, the RAM or motherboard. Okay, so this post is used to determine actually which piece of hardware is giving the problem. So now motherboards. The motherboard provides the foundation for the personal computer, and every piece of hardware from the CPU to expansion card directly or indirectly plugs into the motherboard. So every piece of hardware is connected to your motherboard. The motherboard contains the wires called traces that make up the buses of the system. Buses, you may be knowing what is a bus. That is a connection between input output devices and to CPU, and it connecting input output devices, CPU and memory. So it holds the vast majority of the ports used by the peripherals, and it distributes the power from the power supply. Without the motherboard, you have no PC. There will be no PC without a motherboard. So motherboard plays an important role. It is the foundation for the personal computer, and every piece of hardware is connected to this motherboard, and all the it has the bus system. Okay, and it holds the majority of ports used by the peripherals, and it distributes the power from the power supply.